for joining our webinar today. My name is Hannah Banks. I'm a Director of External Relations at Cambridge Tutors College. With me today is Dr Emyr Bakker, who is a lecturer in medical sciences at University of Central Lancaster. Today we will talk about one of the best routes to progress to a UK degree with the help of NCUK Foundation delivered at Cambridge Tutors College. I work for the college, and briefly I would like to present about who we are and what we do at Cambridge Tutors College, as well as just discuss our location, the courses we do in general, and what students gain at studying with us. And then I'll move on to talk about our partnership with NCUK. NCUK stands for North Consortium of UK Universities, and the two foundation courses that we run with the partnership or in partnership with NCUK. And later on, we'll focus on the topic of today's webinar, which is the pathway to medicine degrees or to medical related degrees, again with the help of NCUK Foundation delivered at Cambridge Tutors College. There will be a very short presentation, and after that I will pass the word over to Dr. Bakker to talk about the course, the progression, the entry requirements, and any specifics of the course. And later on, we'll have the opportunity for a Q&A session to ask as many questions as you would like. During the presentation, I'm a co-host and presenter. I'm not actually able to monitor the chat option, but please feel free. Everyone is muted. This webinar is recorded and will be circulated later. I'll do a follow-up in the end. And if you do have any questions during the presentation, by all means, please send them via chat mode, and I will be able to join the chat later. And for the Q&A session, we'll use both chat option but also live questions. So please listen attentively and be prepared to answer, to ask any questions later. So let's start. Okay, well, welcome to Cambridge Tutors College, and I'll just quickly present who we are and what we do. There's a number of colleges out there, and despite the name Cambridge Tutors College, we're actually based in London. The name of Cambridge Tutors College comes from the founder of our college, Roger Osborne, who was a Cambridge University graduate, and hence he named the college Cambridge Tutors College. And originally the college was for boys only, to get them prepared to enter Oxbridge, and later on we became a co-ed institution. Currently, Cambridge Tutors College is a well-established independent sixth form college catering for both overseas and local students, and we are a co-educational institution. We're very successful and been successful for many years, and we regard ourselves experts at getting students in one of the top UK universities. Year to year we produce quite outstanding results from, I'll give you a comparative, as you can see on the slide, from 2000 to 2020, over 56% of our grades were A stars and A in A levels, and 78% were A to Bs. With above grades, over 40% of our students always enter Russell Group universities, to include Oxford and Cambridge. We also run, apart from the foundation, which we already mentioned, we also run a separate Oxbridge medical prep program as well for our students. We are conveniently located in London, only 20 minutes from centre if you wish to go from the college to central London. We are a day as well as a boarding school. We do have boarding students, two options for accommodation, which is boarding house and homestay. And we're very, very highly academically focused institution. We do weekly reports for students and parents, and weekly tests for our students in all the subjects. It doesn't matter what course they're taking, whether that is GCSE, A-levels, or a foundation course. All the students get tested weekly for the chosen subject. And yet we're quite small, quite unique in each college, and our classes range between 6 to 9 students per class. So this is the ratio for teacher to student, 6 to 9. Okay, this is a few, just a nice compilation of pictures for you guys. This is our location. You can see it's very green around. We're based in the Parkland of London, so we are located in south of London. This is our college. This is a historic Victorian building, as you can see, and it's quite a traditional setting as well. Small and cozy, and yet we are in the suburbs of London, a very quiet residential area, which is also very safe for the students. I know that a lot of parents, students, and partners overseas, they always want to have something in London, but very safe and protected. So I think we have a very nice location for the students. And again, it's a very safe residential neighborhood in London. We are surrounded by greenery, and there is a park, quite a large park outside the college. So in general, I mentioned that we're not a big college. We don't have a big infrastructure. We do have 32 classrooms, 5 laboratories, computer lab. We do have a diner or cafeteria area, as well as library, self-study and resource room, and a few places for students to relax as well. And again, coming back to our success over the years, we've analysed the past 20 years about our university placements, and you can see that on this slide that we do what we promised to do. We make and help students attain best offers for the UK universities, and you can see our placement statistics on this slide. Again, feel free to ask any questions later on about any of the slides we covered today. And of course, we've produced a number of alumni that come back to us. They always praise and refer the students to us and really talk nicely about the college. And I've just used one of the slides to about a recent Cambridge University graduate, Zikun Porn, who says, whenever my friends ask me which school I study at, I probably say to them Cambridge Tutors College. And why is it so? My first impression of CTC is the warm-heartedness and friendliness from everyone in the college, from staff to students as well. And this is so very true, that we are very small and very, very friendly college. And a lot of students of ours do enjoy this kind of cozy atmosphere and where everyone knows each other by name. The facility is well equipped. Again, we do invest into our facilities at the college. The location is convenient and the timetable is tailor-made to best suit students' demand. And this is again very, very true. Because we're an independent college, we do ensure that whatever we create for the student nurtures the interests of the students and caters for all the students' demands. And finally, we're moving on to talk about our partnership. We became partners with NCUK in 2019, so it's a new, fresh partnership, and we've already delivered some good results with this partnership. Again, I'll quickly introduce what is NCUK, Northern Consortium of Universities, why we've decided out of all the foundation providers to choose particular NCUK foundation. I think the statistics say a lot. If you look at the graphs here, you can see that 90% of NCUK students, whoever completes NCUK foundation, again at Cambridge Tutors College, to get into the first choice of universities. It's quite impressive statistics here. 80% of NCUK students achieve a first or second class degree at university later. So it does mean there's a very thorough preparation, a breach to the university. And again, the 90% visa success rate for NCUK students. So we are compliant, and as a college, we work closely together with NCUK colleagues to deliver on the promise and obviously ensure that all the students get fabulous results, but also get their visa and visa compliant. Okay. So Cambridge Tutors College, when we decided on our partnership with NCUK and to deliver NCUK Foundation in London, we chose two streams. NCUK has a number of options, a number of pathways. Just to draw attention that at Cambridge Tutors College, we do the International Foundation year in business, but also in science medical pathway. And particularly today, we will be talking about the medical pathway. And the core modules are chemistry, biology, and EAP, which stands for English for Academic Purposes. I will clarify this in a little bit. In addition, students can also choose one of the following modules. They can add physics or math. And one of the minimum entry requirements is age restrictions. So the student or age student and applicant has to be 17 plus. And this course is for 3 subjects only. The minimum IELTS requirements for September start is 5, band 5 in IELTS, and for a January start and 5.5 band. So you can see here in the top left corner that we do have a 1-year course and a 2-term course. Again, we do have 2 modes for delivering our foundation. So looking at the foundation in sciences and medical foundation, we can deliver a 9-month September course and also a 6 months what we call a fast track course. Fast track course require a bit of higher IELTS, but also high academic achievement, high academic background. It's a bit more intensive course, but at the end, the results are the same. So if you are interested in sending students or referring students, or if you are a student choosing a foundation provider, again, you can start in September, but also there is a January start, a bit more fast track and a bit more intensive. Okay, we've looked at the previous slide. What is the NCUK International Foundation year? Again, it was mentioned on previous slides. You choose 3 modules to study. It's very, very much similar if you're familiar with the A-level system in British education. It's just like the UK A-level qualification. You choose 3 modules to study, depending on degree. For the sciences, you would choose mostly chemistry, biology, and physics or math. Plus, you always do English for academic purposes, which is EAP. Again, if you do have any questions about the modules, feel free to ask me later. English for academic purposes, just bear in mind that we don't do IELTS as part of the foundation course. We call it English for academic purposes, EAP, and then whatever students will get 8 hours per week on their curriculum. And the exam they sit, the test they sit for EAP, we then use a calculator or equivalent of IELTS. When students get the scores A, B, C, we then convert it to IELTS, and they obviously use it for the university application. This is just a comparison graph, a bit of something to compare with what is NCUK in comparison to A-level and any IB course. So you can see NCUK, the length of the course is only 1 year. IELTS is a no, like I said. We use EAP and an equivalent of EAP and then conversion to a band in IELTS. Guarantee in place, yes. So when you complete a foundation, NCUK Foundation, you do have a guaranteed place. 3 offers from one of the NCUK partners. And the choice of university also can be unlimited. You don't necessarily need to complete the NCUK and progress to one of the NCUK partners. Again, you can choose to progress to any different university and use your foundation results. The way the course is run is 70% is examinations and 30% is coursework, and it's all delivered by Cambridge College Tutors staff who is trained to deliver NCUK Foundation, but also heads of academic departments at Cambridge Tutors College. So it's a very, very good academic background as well. The entry requirements, I'll just summarize, but the slide is there, and I will obviously circulate the webinar recording so you can come back to this and have a look. Typically, we're looking at the minimum age, I didn't mention this before, is 17 plus. We're looking at if a student comes from overseas, and it's only for overseas students, bear in mind, completion of secondary high school education, which is year 12, and a proof of diploma. Again, students can progress from other courses if they started doing a course and then they were quite maybe unsuccessful, they didn't get the choice they required, or they stopped at IGCSE level. We can take this into consideration, and then we'll be able to help them to join the foundation course. So this is just a representative of many options where the student can join us. The typical is the high school diploma plus an equivalent of IELTS, which is 5.5, and then one of those options can classified as well. I did mention that when you do complete an NCUK foundation, the good thing is, and why students particularly choose us, is that you do have a guaranteed offer from a university. We normally say there's 2 conditional offers and 1 unconditional offer, depending on the university entry requirements. To get the guarantee, students just need to pass the program and get at least 3 grades in C's and subject modules and EAP grade C. Which is fairly achievable. Well, finally, we're moving on to the topic of today's presentation. It's studying medicine abroad with NCUK Foundation, and we'll concentrate more and focus more on talking about the medical pathway. What is it all about? So what is the International Foundation and Medicine Pathway? Again, it's a 9-month course designed to international students who would like to bridge the gap between their local secondary education and studying a university degree. And here we're talking about the university degree, obviously a medical degree or a medicine degree. The International Foundation Medicine Pathway includes 3 modules: biology, chemistry, math for science, and English for academic purposes. And what degree courses can I progress to? Very good question. So the medicine pathway, as it says on the tin, it guarantees your progression to study medicine as a degree, but also to over 80 medical related degree courses. I can share later in my follow-up email the course finder. And if you go on the NCUK website and you add medical or medicine, you can see the list of all NCUK partner universities and their programs there. Okay, just a suggestion that you can do pharmacy, nursing, biomedical science, physiotherapy, biochemistry, and more. And today, particularly, we'll talk about the medicine degree itself. And finally, the very important question: how much does it cost to do NCUK Foundation at Cambridge Tutors College? So currently the fee for 1 year is 13,500. If you would like to do a boarding with us, that's slightly more. In addition to this, if you get really good grades following NCUK Foundation, you can apply for one of NCUK scholarships as well. Okay, and finally, I'm moving on to give a word to Dr. Bakker, who is with us today to talk about the medical pathway and a medicine pathway at UCLM. Okay, if you bear with me just a second. Okay, Dr. Bakker, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me okay?
Good. I can. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. So you should be able to take over and making you a co-host. So can you try to share your slides with us?
Okay. Is that coming through okay?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you all today. Just to introduce myself, my name is Dr Emyr Bakker, and I'm a lecturer in medical sciences at the University of Central Lancaster in the School of Medicine. So in this presentation today, we're going to be talking about studying medicine in the UK with a bit of a focus on Uclan and how our medical degree is structured. So the overview of the session today is we'll have a brief overview of Uclan itself. We'll talk about different nomenclature for different medical degrees, and we'll also have a focus on the Uclan Mbbs. We'll also talk about how you can make a good application to a medical school. We'll talk about the interview process and a little bit about how you practice medicine in the UK post-graduation. And where relevant, we'll also discuss how COVID can affect the student experience, because we are all living in very unusual times. So, Uclan itself celebrated their 190th anniversary in 2018. So we're quite an old university, or quite an old institution now. So the university and its predecessors, we've been educating people and helping them achieve their goals for almost 200 years. We're a very international, multi-campus university. If we're lucky enough to have you guys as students in the future, then you'll be joining a cohort of students from all over the world, which is something that is absolutely fantastic, because when you see people from other countries, it really broadens your mind and gives you more insight into life, essentially. So we also have a number of other different campuses, and we'll touch on this where relevant later in the presentation. Our main campuses are in Preston, in West Lakes, near the Lake District, and in Burnley. We also have a campus in Cyprus, and I keep asking to get sent to Cyprus because they have better weather than the United Kingdom, but unfortunately they're keeping me in the UK for now. So approximately we have 38,000 students and staff. We're the third largest university in Lancashire, and we have a worldwide alumni network of over 180,000 people, which is a lot of professional connections that our students and graduates can exploit and use. One thing that we do quite strongly at Uclan is we maintain links with our graduates, and you will have access to the careers service even after you've graduated. In terms of some statistics for how Uclan works, we're in the top 6% in the world, judged by the Centre for World University Rankings. We achieved the maximum of 5 QS stars for teaching quality. And we also were awarded silver in the Teaching Excellence Framework, which means that we consistently exceed rigorous national quality assessments. And we're amongst the highest risers in terms of rankings, according to the Complete University Guide. So Uclan is, in terms of its medical school, is quite new, but we are, so to speak, climbing the ranks. And we're quite innovative when it comes to our healthcare professional training. So we've been trained doctors and doing our medical degree since 2015. In addition, we've been training nurses, midwives, social workers, and so on for much longer. We also have innovative curriculum when it comes to our physician associate courses, and this is something we'll touch on at the end of the presentation. So we have a dental school, we have a medical school, we have a nursing school, so we have a huge variety of healthcare roles that we can train students on. And this feeds very well into our curriculum and into our healthcare training, because we're able to put on what's known as IPE days, or interprofessional education days. And with that, you get to have shared teaching sessions with students on other healthcare programs. And that's a fantastic opportunity, because it's exactly what you'll be doing in real life. You'll be working with these people from all kinds of different professions. So if we can give you that exposure early, that's a win in our book. We're currently undertaking a £200 million master plan project, which is set for completion in 2021. The ultimate aim of this is to create a world-class campus which will benefit the whole of the community, not just the university, and contribute to the regeneration of Preston. As part of this plan, we've built a £35 million Engineering Innovation Centre, which was opened in 2019, and we've spent £60 million refurbishing and recreating our Student Centre and University Square, which is currently under construction and should be due somewhere in 2021. We also have expansion plans for our Burnley campus. As we'll touch on later, if you come on to the medical degree, then you may spend some time in Burnley in your later years. And as part of our expansion plans and as part of our plans to maintain the professional standards that we're setting out, we want to expand our Burnley campus as well. So let's have a little talk now about studying medicine in the UK. You may have come across multiple different titles throughout your research or things that you've heard. You may have seen MBCHB, MBBS, BMBS, BMBCH, MB. It doesn't matter. They're all essentially the same thing. They will all train you to be a medical doctor, and they're what's known as a PMQ, or a primary medical qualification, that has been approved by the GMC. The reason why the United Kingdom has so many different variations is simply because it's one of the older institutes, or one of the countries in the world that's been offering medical training for a long time. So all of the different universities had their own traditions as to how they named the degree. But it doesn't matter whether you graduate with an MBBS, MBCHB, BMBCH, it doesn't matter. They're all a primary medical qualification. At Uclan, we call our medical degree an MBBS, which is Bachelor of Medicine, Bachelor of Surgery. And this is a 5-year program, which for medicine in the UK is standard. So there are options in some universities where you can do a graduate entry MBBS, which is 4 years. However, if you're coming in straight from A-levels or the NCUK Foundation, then the program will be 5 years in length. So why should you choose Uclan for your medical degree? First of all, we have full accreditation from the General Medical Council, pending a rigorous quality assessment process that we've been undertaking over the past few years. We are listed in the World Directory of Medical Schools, and we were actually voted or ranked as the top medical school in the northwest of England, according to the Guardian University Guide. We've been training medics since 2015. Now, that was only 6 years ago. Now, a lot can change in 6 years. Like if you think back to where you were 6 years ago, your life was in a very different place. However, in some ways, the fact that we have been training medics only since 2015 is actually a very good thing, because it means that all of our facilities are new. It means that all of our teaching methodologies to train doctors are new, and based on what research says, it's the best way to train doctors. And this will come into when we're talking about our curriculum in a few slides' time. At Uclan, our medical school also has accreditation from the Royal College of Surgeons for our postgraduate provision. So we have a series of professional accreditations that speak to the rigor of our programs. On the image on the right-hand side, you can see our anatomy room. So we'll touch on this later on, but we actually teach anatomy through models and simulation. So it's a little bit horrifying when you look at some of the models and the expressions the faces are pulling. However, if you want to effectively learn anatomy, what better way than to get your hands on these models and see how they all interlock together and how they connect. One thing that we do differently at Uclan is we give you early patient contact. So the traditional medical degree model was that you spend the first 2 to 3 years learning your sciences. So you'll learn biochemistry, anatomy, physiology, pharmacology, and so on. And you essentially spend those 2 years just learning your sciences. And then you go from that preclinical phase to a clinical phase. And in the clinical phase, that's where you start to learn all of your clinical skills. That's where you start to learn how to interact with patients. We don't do it that way. We have built our MBBS with the healthcare needs or the healthcare professional needs directly in mind. As a result, you will get contact with real patients with real problems as early as the first semester of your first year. So that means that very early on in your training, you're integrating your scientific knowledge with your clinical knowledge. And that is what being a doctor is all about. So on this page as well, we have a few quotes from some of our students. So as I said, in year one, you'll be seeing real patients. In addition to that, you actually go out on placement as well. So Maya, who's from Kenya in her first year, she said, the excitement set in when we started placement. I was interacting with actual patients right from year one. And Unaludo from Botswana said the small group sessions and the patient interaction from first year were some of the positives that she simply couldn't ignore. Because the opportunity to interact with real patients is fantastic. Now, my background, myself, I'm a scientist. So I became a scientist because I don't want to talk to people. Whereas you guys, you want to become clinicians because you want to see people, you want to help people with their problems. So therefore, if we can get you speaking to patients as early as year one, why wouldn't we? So we have an innovative curriculum with a primary care focus at Uclan. And we have a good staff to student ratio. Relative to other medical schools, we're quite small. So although we will be recruiting what seems like a large number of students, especially compared to your school time or when you've been on a foundation year, for example, in terms of medical schools or university sizes, we are quite a small medical school. And Suleiman from India has said that the support provided by Uclan, whether you're a fresher or final year student, is phenomenal, to say the least. And we do like to think that we are there for our students as much as we can be. We also have a large number of places available for international students. In terms of our MBBS program to become a doctor, approximately 90% of our student cohort is international from all over the world. The way our current recruitment is going is maybe veering more towards 95% international. So we have a huge, huge number of international students, which creates that diverse learning atmosphere that we talked about before. And it means that you can see people from all over the world. So Rihab from Libya said that the international diversity is fascinating and very welcoming. And as I said, we have that supportive global learning environment. And Suleiman from India has said that he was thrilled to find a lot of positive support for students of every religion. We have multi-faith center, we have space for students to pray and to take care of their spiritual needs, as well as their physical and mental health needs. In terms of the teaching team, we like to believe that we teach you from a position of experience, and we have a good multidisciplinary expert team. So our team ranges from practicing clinicians who teach part-time at the university. We have recently qualified doctors who are teaching fellows. So these are people who've completed a medical degree. They've done their 2 years of foundation training in the UK, and now they want to take a year before they go on to their specialty training. They want to take a year out so that they can teach. And that's a full-time position. So you'll have contact with recently qualified doctors from day one. And what that means is you can get a real idea of what it's like to be a doctor in the 21st century. In addition to our expert clinicians and practicing clinicians, we also have teaching from expert scientists. So part of the challenge of becoming a medical doctor is that you have to integrate so many different disciplines together. You have to integrate your microbiology knowledge with your biochemistry knowledge, with your anatomy knowledge. So in order to help you effectively learn each scientific discipline, we have expert scientists within that discipline. And we also have research active staff. Now, this presents a benefit for you all in the sense that whilst we'll teach you the fundamentals of science and science, how it applies to patients and medicine, research is what drives things forward. So if you're being taught by staff who are research active, it gives you an opportunity to see the cutting edge of the field. It gives you the opportunity to undertake research internships, and it gives you the opportunity to give you fundamental experience that can help you get on to academic medicine in the future if that's what you're interested in. One thing the world sorely needs is clinician researchers. So medical doctors or other clinicians who are also research qualified. And the fact that we have our research active staff will help you really understand research and carry out research. So you can see that we have a broad multidisciplinary team to help train you be the best doctors you can be. So in terms of our facilities, as I said, because we're a new medical school, we've only been training doctors since 2015, that does mean we have experience, but it also means that our equipment and everything is new. So we have dedicated high specification medical skill laboratories. We have dedicated anatomy suites, and we also have something called an anatomage table, which is something we'll talk about shortly. We have NHS standard equipment with linked bedside computers and cameras. So our clinical skills suites really simulate what it's like to be on a ward. And Sarmad from South Africa said that the facilities, such as the clinical skills, anatomy labs, the library and gym, are of course first class. And this is our anatomage table. So for any attendees in the room, if anyone is able, if you can see the chat, can anyone tell me what a cadaver is?
Everyone is muted, so I can unmute. I cannot see anything, to be honest.
That's okay. We'll keep it simple then. So a cadaver is a corpse that has been donated to a medical school or educational facility in order to help the students learn dissection. Now that's the traditional way to learn anatomy, really, if we harken back hundreds of years. I will say that at Uclan we don't use cadavers. The reason for that is, again, tying back to the fact that we're a new medical school, so we were able to base our curriculum and teaching methods off what research says is the best way to train doctors, not the tradition, the best. So one thing we don't do is we don't use cadavers. And the reason for that is very simple. Research has shown that the use of anatomy models and the use of simulations, such as these anatomage tables, is just as good, if not better, than cadavers. And it also represents a way for, shall we say, more variation. These anatomage tables, they are actually based off real people. So a person who would have been donated their body as a cadaver in one instance, instead donated their body to the company that developed the anatomage suites. And there's dozens of different patients. So with the anatomage table, you can bring up a variety of real patients of different ages, gender, ethnicity, and so on. You can bring up the simulation of their body, and using a virtual scalpel, you can peel away layer by layer. So you see the surface anatomy, then you can see the underlying anatomy. And the benefit with something virtual like this is there's an undo button. So if you're working with a real cadaver and you make a mistake, the cadaver is wasted. Whereas if you're working with these anatomage tables, these virtual dissection tables, then it doesn't matter if you make a mistake. You can just do, undo, and then suddenly the skin reappears. So it offers the opportunity for more in-depth learning because you can spend as much time as you want looking at this virtual cadaver. And it means that multiple students can interrogate the same cadaver. So the anatomage tables are very, very cool. I'm not an anatomist. I'm a molecular oncologist by background. So I'm not a fan of anatomy myself, but I think that this is fantastic. And again, we've got another snapshot here from our anatomy rooms. So we have a human anatomy resource and learning center. And you can see that we have some of our students playing with these models, because again, anatomy is a subject that really lends itself to some hands-on work. So if we can show you these facilities and give you access, it's a win in our book. So I mentioned earlier on that Uclan has an innovative curriculum when it comes to our medical degree. And for those of you who've done your reading in the past, you might be familiar with what's known as the Rod of Asclepius. So this is the international symbol for medicine. Excuse me. It's the international symbol for medicine, where you have a rod and you have a snake twining up that rod. So that's a traditional symbol that's used for medicine. And you can see that our visualization of our curriculum is evocative of that. You have that spine, that central spine of professionalism. So interacting with patients in a professional manner, conducting yourself in an appropriate manner. That spine persists throughout all 5 years of your degree. And then across that spine, you have a winding series of 3 themes, which are medical skills and quality care in blue. That's your clinical skills, your clinical knowledge. You have integrated science and clinical medicine in green. That's your scientific knowledge combined with the application to clinical practice. And then in purple, you have evidence-informed practice of medicine, which is all about statistics, epidemiology, research, and what we call the biopsychosocial model of medicine. And we're going to talk about what that means in a few slides' time. So you divide the program into 2 phases. Phase 1 is kind of your introductory phase, where it's more theory-based, but you still learn about clinical skills, how to interact with patients. You still go on placement. And in phase 2, which is years 3 to 5 of the program, that's all about placements and much more clinically focused. So in phase 2, you will spend 3 days a week in placement, 1 day a week at university, and 1 day a week for self-directed study. And that is a huge opportunity to really focus that clinical knowledge. Year 5 is all about the transition to clinical practice. And here again, we have a schematic of our 5-year program with the 3 themes that we've discussed. So the integrated science and clinical medicine, that will teach you the fundamentals of all the different disciplines, developmental biology, anatomy, physiology, etc. And we apply this thematically to body systems. So when you start on ISCM, or Integrated Science and Clinical Medicine, you'll start off on a core block, and that will teach you the fundamentals of that discipline. Excuse me. So that will teach you the fundamentals of the discipline. And when it comes to later blocks, you'll move on and you'll have a gastrointestinal block, a cardiorespiratory block, a urogenital block, and so on. So you will learn about each of the body systems and each of the disciplines as they pertain to that body system. In years 3 and 4, it shifts and it becomes more clinically orientated, but it's still about that scientific strand. Evidence-informed practice of medicine is really all about biostatistics, research methods, epidemiology, and so on. One key aspect of evidence-informed practice of medicine is what we call that biopsychosocial model of medicine. And what this refers to is the idea that your patient isn't just like a disease that you need to treat with a drug. They're a person. They have psychological needs. They have social needs. And all of these can influence your patient's response to therapy. So one of the things that you'll learn about in your ISCM module, your science module, is about epigenetics. And it may be something that you're familiar with before. And its research has shown that the way that you respond to stress as an individual leaves epigenetic tags on your DNA that will affect how your grandchildren respond to stress. So the point of this is that if our genetics and our psychology is powerful enough to affect subsequent generations, then of course your patient's psychology is going to influence their treatment and their response to therapy, which is why we train you to be a holistic practitioner. We don't just want you to think in terms of, oh, they've got inflammation and they've got polyuria, so therefore they've got XYZ. It's not just about the medical signs and symptoms. We want you to consider their social needs, their psychological needs. All of those are incredibly important to patient care as well. That theme of evidence-informed practice of medicine runs throughout the 5 years. And similarly, we have our medical skills and quality care unit. And this one is all about how to interact with patients, how to do a cardiorespiratory exam, or how to do any kind of clinical exam, really. And that's what will train you to be a compassionate, caring doctor. The way the program is currently structured is that you do your final university exams at the end of year 4. What that will give you then is the opportunity in year 5 to really prepare for that transition to clinical practice. So I mentioned earlier that we have multiple campus sites at Uclan. So in years 1 and 2, you'll be based in the Preston campus. In years 3 and 4, you'll either be based in West Lakes or in Burnley. And in year 5, you move to the Burnley campus. So only the majority of students will go to Burnley in years 3 and 4. Some will go to West Lakes. But the students who've gone to West Lakes have appreciated the fact that it's a bit more rural and it means it's a bit quieter so that they can really focus on their studies. But it's personal preference at the end of the day. But you may be required to go to the different campus sites depending on need, essentially. So again, just some quotes from our students. So Chantal from Namibia says that one of her favourite places in Preston is Avonham Park, which is a beautiful area close to the town centre. It's a good place for a jog, for a walk, or for cycling. And it's a great way to get some fresh air after a long day of studies. Because needless to say, medicine is a hard degree. So you're going to be having a lot of contact time. So you need something to clear your head and switch off at the end of the day. The benefit of Preston as well, as Rehab has said, is that there's excellent transport links to other major cities, including London, Edinburgh, and Manchester. So from Preston train station, you can get a train to Manchester, which, if it's direct, will take 30 minutes, 35 minutes. And that means you're really close to like a really big city. Similarly, if you want to go to London, it's about 2 hours, 2.5 hours from Preston. So you have really good transport links to major cities as well. In terms of the Burnley campus, so Burnley's a small town in Pennine, Lancashire. And Suleiman from India has said that the one essential feature any student can agree on of what to look for in a study space is the sense of ambience and quiet. And Victoria Mill provides that for the students. So Victoria Mill is our kind of main building in the Burnley campus. The West Lakes campus is quiet, rural, and near the Lake District. So it's a very beautiful place to study. And because fewer students go there, you may have more individual attention on placement, for example. So our learning outcomes for our MBBS, they've been mapped to the documentation that the General Medical Council have provided, which includes Tomorrow's Doctors and Promoting Excellence. so standards for medical education and training. We also offer you the opportunity for an elective period where you can study abroad. So if you're interested, for example, in returning to your home country to practice and do a placement there, that is an option. We have multiple teaching and learning strategies ranging from big lecture groups to small group teaching. And we also have an option for high-performing students to take an intercalated degree at master's level at the end of year 4. So if you're a high-performing student and you've done 4 years of MBBS, you can intercalate and do a master's degree. So currently, one of the main drives for that is our Mbbs, Master's Degree by Research in Medical Sciences. So you can take essentially a year out from studying medicine and train in research methods and become a scientist as well as a medical doctor. So we've talked a lot about the Uclan MBBS and its curriculum and about Uclan in general. What about applying? So the entry criteria, if you're coming in from an A-level program, will be AAB, including chemistry, and at least one other science, and then a third academic subject. We'll also require an IELTS of 7.0 in each component, or Uclan equivalent English language test. If you're coming on from the NCUK International Foundation year, such as the one at Cambridge Tutors College, then you need to take that science pathway that was mentioned earlier, and you'll need to achieve AAB, including chemistry and maths for science. We'll also require the IELTS as above in 7.0, or you can take the EAP, the English for Academic Purposes module, and we need a grade A in that with no component below an A. So the NCUK International Foundation year will feed in very nicely to the medical degree. Other universities, you may see MCAT, UCAT, BMAT. These are required by many, many medical schools, but not Uclan. For a number of reasons, we don't consider these tests. We only consider your long listing based on your qualifications, and then shortlisting based on your personal statement, transferable skills, and also your performance at interview. And just on the image on the right-hand side, we have some students practicing venipuncture in the clinical skills suite. So if you want to apply to the University of Central Lancashire to study medicine, then you can either apply via UCAS or you can apply directly. So one thing to bear in mind is that applying for medicine in the UK, you have to apply very early. So the traditional UCAS deadline is in January, but if you're applying for medicine, then you need to make your application months before that. So it's good to have as much awareness as you can before you even come onto a foundation year so that you can create a good plan, because medicine is so competitive. That said, we do also accept direct applications. So if you want to apply outside of UCAS and outside of that strict deadline, you may be eligible to apply through a direct application. The application will require a personal statement and a transferable skills statement. And the transferable skills or work experience statement, that's where you list what skills you have that translate to you being a good doctor. So when it comes to your personal statement, this is where you're going to discuss what do you know about the role and duties of a doctor? What's your motivation? Why do you want to be a doctor? Give us some examples of why you'd be a good doctor. Talk about your strengths. Now, a key rule with both creative writing and personal statement writing is show, don't tell. Don't just tell us that you're a fantastic team worker, that you have good scientific skills, that you're good with patients, because anybody can say that. Instead, show us that you've got those skills by talking about a specific example. Talk about a specific example where you were a team leader. talk about a specific example where you helped a patient. And all of that will show us that you've got these skills rather than just telling it. So, when it comes to your work experience, this doesn't just have to be shadowing a doctor. It can be anything, anything that's relevant. So it could be voluntary, it could be paid, it could be a caring role, it could be something in the community or a care home. It could be in a school if you mentor junior students, for example, because much of the skills that are required to be a good teacher are also required to be a good doctor. So it's about transferable skills. Could be that you've observed care provided for your family in hospital. What's important is to understand the impact and the value of the work you undertook. So it's important to be able to reflect and explain the effect that that placement or experience had on your career choice. One thing we train you to do at Uclan is to become a reflective practitioner. So this means considering your experiences and thinking about what you could do differently, how it's affected you, that kind of thing. So if you can show us that you can reflect earlier on, that's points in your favor. Now, it's tricky to get work experience during a global pandemic where we all have to remain isolated, but there are still options available. There's a lot of online NHS volunteering you can do, for example. Or as I said, it could even be other things that you do in school or at home. Anything is valid as long as you can think about how that skill is transferable. When it comes to the tuition fees, for our 5-year program, MBBS, the annual fees are around £44,500 per year. And that's for the first year of study, and it will increase each year in line with the UK Retail Price Index. As we'll touch on later, we also have a 6-year MBBS degree. So our normal degree is 5 years, which requires AAB. However, if you drop a grade and you get ABB, then we may make you an offer for the 6-year program, which is a continuous degree. You don't need to apply for medicine again or anything, but it just means that you have an extra year to help get your A-level or foundation year equivalent knowledge up to speed. So for that 6-year program, year 1 is £17,500, whereas years 2 to 6 are £44,500. So let's imagine now that you've got the grades, you've applied, and we've shortlisted you because you wrote a fantastic personal statement. How do the interviews work? Most medical schools, or a lot of medical schools at least, are using MMIs, or multiple mini interviews. So the traditional interview format is where you have, for example, 2 people or 3 people all looking at you at the same time, all asking you individual questions. The MMI is a bit different, and this will rate your skills of interpreting information, about decision making, communicating clearly, and critiquing information. And in the context of the MMI for the MBBS at Uclan, we have 8 stations. So you have 8 individual assessors, each assessing a different circumstance or scenario. The key thing with an MMI, at least at Uclan, is we don't require specific knowledge. So for example, I'm a biochemist, like I said, and I would love to ask you all what the role of phosphofructokinase 1 is in cellular metabolism. Unfortunately, I can't ask that because it's specific knowledge. So the MMI isn't about knowing everything. It's about how do you approach a problem? How well do you communicate? How can you critique information? So you don't need to have huge amounts of knowledge. It's more about how you approach a problem. Now, in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic, again, because we're living in very unusual times at the moment, we have conducted panel interviews online instead of these MMIs. However, our panel interviews are still mapped to the same domains of good medical practice that the General Medical Council has outlined as our MMIs assess. So our panel interviews will assess the same competencies and standards as the MMIs. But obviously, within the context of a pandemic, we don't have a choice other than to use these remote panel interviews. Okay, now let's look at practicing medicine in the UK. So we're going to fast forward from your lives by about 6 years now. So you've done your foundation, you've applied for medicine, finished medicine, and now you're a doctor. So now what? Well, at the moment, the way it works is that when you graduate, you'll need to complete what's known as the MLA. This is the Medical Licensing Exam. And this is a requirement by the General Medical Council for all new graduating doctors. You then apply for the NHS Foundation training. And we support you fully when it comes to your application for your foundation year training. And as a graduate of Uclan, you are a UK graduate. So regardless of international status, you can go through that foundation application process. And one thing to bear in mind is that the way that post-graduation medical training works in different countries will vary. So for example, in some countries, you'll have, if you graduate with a medical degree, you then have to go through like a matching system. And there are hundreds of medical doctors in some countries that don't get matched. So they have to wait again a year until they're matched. The UK's rate of success for matching graduate doctors to a foundation training job is probably the highest globally, with well over 90% of the applicants getting employed. And any of this, of course, will be subject to visa requirements, but that's something you can receive help from the international office. So in terms of that medical training pathway, as we said, you have your Uclan MBBS, 5 or 6 years, and you do the foundation year training, which is 2 years at FY1 and FY2. And you're actually a salaried employee at that stage. You're separate from the university, although we'd still love to hear from you. And then after those 2 foundation years, you go on for your specialty and general practice training. And currently in the UK, there are around 60 different specialties. You train for approximately 3 years for general practice, or 5 to 7 years in other specialties, sometimes longer. It just depends what interests you. So some useful links that you may find interesting are the Medical Schools Council, the General Medical Council, and Uclan. And one quote that we've had from Chantel from Namibia is, she's truly so impressed by how much support they received as students from the word go. And she felt grateful to have been a part of a university that really cares about its students. We do like to think that we're there for our students as much as we can be, because university is very much a transitional period in your life. It'll change you completely, and we want to be there to help you through that journey. The last thing we'll discuss is, what if you don't have an offer for medicine? What do you do? The answer is you'll consider alternatives. I mentioned earlier that we have a 5-year medical degree. That's our standard one that requires AAB. Now, if you've interviewed for MBBS and you've passed the interview and you received a conditional offer, for example, of AAB, but on results day you've got ABB, then as long as you're an international student, we'll make you an offer for that 6-year program instead. Now, the thing to bear in mind is that this foundation year on the 6-year degree is different to the foundation year that you'll be coming onto through the NCUK. It's more university focused at that stage. So it's a continuous 6-year program, and you need to have your NCUK qualification in order to come onto it. But what it provides is an opportunity for people who just dropped a grade to still study medicine. It just takes a year longer. And in the context of your entire life, a year is nothing, believe me. So as I said, this program will require ABB. You'll have to have passed an interview, but it gives you that extra opportunity to train as a doctor if you've just dropped a grade. Other alternatives include our BSc in Medical Sciences. So this is a 2-year accelerated degree. And the idea behind it is that you study for 3 semesters per year instead of 2. So that means that you finish a year earlier, you save a lot of money in tuition fees, and it means you get a bachelor's degree in medical science after 2 years. And that's what you can use to apply for graduate entry medicine, for example, or PhDs, or other pathways. And the entry requirements for the BSc Medical Sciences are BBB, preferably from 2 science subjects and a 3rd academic subject. We do also have a foundation entry available for that if you don't have BBB. So this is one option, one alternative to doing MBBS. And by doing this, you get a degree in 2 years and can then apply for graduate entry medicine. Other alternatives include our MSc in Physician Associate Studies. So this will require a BB from NCUK or A-levels, and it's a very similar role to being a doctor. It's a new role in the UK. So a physician associate is a medical professional who provides patient care under the supervision of a consultant or GP. The role includes interviewing and examining patients, ordering tests, interpreting test results, and making decisions about patient management. So the role of a PA is very similar to being a doctor. The difference is that a PA, because their training is a little shorter, they are a supervised clinician or a dependent clinician, which means that although they'll have autonomy in their individual role, and although it means that they have their own scope of practice, they always have a consultant or a GP to refer to if a case is difficult or more specialist, for example. The other benefit of being a physician associate is you have what's known as lateral mobility. So in addition to, so whilst a doctor, for example, will do their specialty training and then spend 7 years, let's say, becoming an oncologist, if they then wanted to retrain in a different specialty, they'd have to go all the way back and retrain and respecialize. Whereas a PA, because they have that dependent relationship, because they're a supervised clinician, they have the opportunity to switch specialties. So they could spend 3 years in emergency medicine, realize that getting an adrenaline rush every day is not good for them, and then decide to go in general practice. And then they could get bored of general practice and then go and work in pediatrics, for example. So because a PA is supervised, they have the ability to switch specialties, which is one of the advantages it has over training to be a doctor. So with our physician associate course, we have 2. We have a postgraduate one, which is 2 years, MSc Physician Associate Practice, and we have an undergraduate one, which is 4 years, which is Integrated Masters in Physician Associate Studies. So again, this just represents another option if medicine doesn't work out. But you have to really want to be a PA because it's a unique role in its own right. And that brings us to the end of this presentation. So if there are any questions, we'll be very happy to take them. Thank you all very much for your time.